everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we are working on replacing a boot on my upper ball joint on the driver's side. So the boot went bad on the upper ball joint and grease is everywhere, right? And so I've got a different boot. I'm going to try and see if it'll work. It is not the screw-on style boot. It is a one energy suspension, like universal one. I'm going to try it instead and give that a try. So anyway, what I'll do is I'm going to show you how to check for a bad ball joint, and I'll put in a clip from a video of a actual bad one, you know, but how to basically inspect for it, and then you know, if it is bad, you know, basically what I'm going to go through, I need to unload the suspension, so I need to, you know, undo the torsion bar to relieve all the stress off the torsion bar. And then I need to remove the bolt from the upper control arm, knock it out so I can take the old boot out, put the new boot in, see if it'll work, and then put it all back together. So I've also removed the caliper to do that. So anyway, let me show you how to at least inspect for suspension parts to see if a knocking sound you may be hearing is tie rod related or ball joint related. And what I'll do is, well, mine aren't bad. I'll try to find a little video clip from somewhere that shows an example of one that is bad if I don't keep knocking stuff off the car. So anyway, hang tight. Let me go through what it takes to check one. One quick thing, guys, always make sure safety right. Have the vehicle up on jack stands and secured. You know, safety is the most important thing. All right, just so you guys can see, here's what I'm talking about the boot. You can see it's basically torn. There's a grease all over the place. So I need to remove this boot here and do a different style. So basically what I've done so far is I've removed the tire and rim, unbolted the caliper with the two bolts top and bottom, and just kind of pulled this out of the way so far. What I need to do next is come under here, and you'll see right here, this part, there's a bolt under here. Okay, you'll want to loosen this bolt to remove the tension from this torsion bar. Okay, and then once we remove the tension from this torsion bar by loosening this, you know, this bolt up right there, then we can come over here, remove the cotter pin, loosen this nut up, knock the ball joint loose from the spindle, and then we can take this old boot off and try that new boot and see if it will work. So anyway, let me go ahead and loosen this guy up so then we can have the load off the suspension here. You'll notice there's no spring. All the load, right, is how this is basically your spring for a you know, non-spring style suspension or for a torsion bar suspension. Anyway, let me go ahead and get this loosened up, and we'll go through the next steps. All right, guys, so I've got, see the bolt nice and loose, and so now the tension is off the torsion bar here. So that is all done. So now you can see, I'm going to try to at least, right, we can move the suspension, you know, up and down a little bit, so it is now relaxed. So now what we can do is go ahead and remove that cotter pin and that nut. I would recommend putting something underneath the lower control arm and stuff. That way it just doesn't, you know, come collapsing down. And I need to still tie up my caliper because it just fell. So let me tie up the caliper out of the way, and then we can go ahead and knock this ball joint loose. So what I've done now is I've removed the cotter pin. You can see I've loosened the nut. So I like to leave the nut on there. That way when I go to knock the ball joint loose right from the spindle, you know, it just doesn't drop out. That the nut, you know, kind of still keeps the assembly in place. So you have two choices now to separate the two. You can use a pickle fork like this and, you know, wedge it in there and hit it and separate them. Or the other way you can do it is give her a good whack on the side, and usually a couple of good whacks on the side with a big hammer, it will, basically separate them as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But the other thing I noticed, and I'm glad I took my caliper off, is listen to this. Sounding a little gravelly. So it's, there's no play at all in this. There's nothing rubbing. So I'm going to pull this off too after I separate the ball joint. After I separate the ball joint and put the new boot on, I'm going to peel this apart, and we're going to see if we got a wheel bearing going bad, or a race, that's doing something funny. And then I'm going to go check the other side of the car too, just to make sure it's doing okay. So anyway, let me separate and deal with this problem, and then I'll come back and deal with this problem. All right, guys, so took a big old pair of channel locks, gripped onto it, took it out. Now, if you want to make sure your ball joint is good, right, you can see this one nice and tight. Okay, it's not flopping around, it's not super loose or anything. So this is still a good ball joint. If you do have to replace it, if you'll notice up here, there's actually a socket that you will use to unscrew that out of the upper control arm. Now mine is a big ball joint. This is actually a 1973 Plymouth Duster front upper and lower control arms and disc brake setup on my car. So this is what they call the big ball joint. If you still have the original, let's say 1970, I think 72 and prior, it's small ball joint, and you will use a smaller socket to unscrew those and get those out. So here's the boot that I'm going to use. This is a non-screw-in boot. I will do a side-by-side comparison here in a second. But basically, you just slip it up in there, stick it back in the hole, tighten the nut up, and this looks like it will seal up pretty good. So I'm going to give it a try, and then we'll take a look and see if she did seal up real good. Now this is like more of a polyurethane, or I don't know what material it is, but it definitely is not the rubber, black, crap that was on this before. So let me go ahead and stick it back in there. We'll tighten it all the way up, and we'll make sure this seals up good to this, all the way up to the lower control arm, and then we'll grease her up, and that should take care of this. And then we'll address that, right? The noisy wheel bearings. All right, everybody, so now if you notice, got the new energy suspension ball joint boot in place. Looks like it fits actually really nice. There's a little gap in the back, but right now the suspension is hanging down. So I imagine once I go ahead and get the suspension sitting on the ground, this will seal up real good. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and grease up the ball joints here. Now that I got to put the cotter pin back in, so I did tighten the knot all the way up. I need to put the cotter pin back in yet, so I just need to do that real quick. But you can see it really is pretty nice. So here is a comparison of the two. So here is the original boot. Oops, grease all over the floor. But here's the original boot. You can see, basically it split this open, this cheap ass material that they used. I'm sure this nice Chinese material, is no good. Here is the energy suspension one that I replaced it with. It does not screw on. The new one, it just seals up, real nice and tight around the ball joint. And then we'll go ahead, like I said, and throw some grease in it, and it should be all set to go. So I just need to cotter pin it, grease it. And then, like I said, now we'll take this thing apart and see why it is making so much noise after I clean up my greasy floor. All right, so we've got, you can see the cotter pin back in place. Went ahead and greased it. Also, don't forget to, do your suspension bolt here, right, for your torsion arm to set your ride height. You know, you may need to run it in and then set the car down and then, you know, turn it in or turn it out to, you know, get your ride height level left to right. So, like I said, so that pretty much takes care of how to at least replace the dust boot and really how to replace the upper ball joint. Like I said, you'll need a special socket if you need to replace the ball joint. Otherwise, just replace the boot. You know, you can just separate the upper control arm from the spindle and put a new boot in place. Now, what I'm going to do is let me go to the other side of the car because I took the caliper off so you can hear what a good side sounds like. So here's the other side of the car. Smooth as butter, nice and quiet. So when I was on Hot Rod Drag Week, I guess almost 3 weeks ago now, I got lucky. I did not have a bearing go out and hopefully destroy the spindle, you know, erase, that kind of thing. So now let's go to the other side of the car again. We'll tear it apart and we'll see what exactly is going on. All right, so guys, I hoped that helped you out with what it takes to either replace an upper ball joint on these old Mopars, or if you need to replace the boot because it just, you know, is old and torn and, you know, grease is leaking out. So hope this kind of helped you out. Also, you know, what to check for your wheel bearings a little bit apparently too. Wasn't expecting that. I was expecting just to have to replace the boot. I did go ahead and replace the opposite side boot as well. You know, I think it took me 10 minutes, you know, since I had already thing apart, to go ahead and put the newer style, you know, polyurethane style boot in there versus that old, you know, crappy thing that China provided. So anyway, guys, hope that helps. Take the time to please like, subscribe, comment, share. You know, help get the video counts up and all that fun stuff. So y'all have a great day in your shop. Take care. Peace out. Till the next upload. See ya.